In this video I'm going to go over the 12IB physics test, the first half of mechanics. So starting with the multi-choice section, the first question asks the magnitude and direction of two vectors x and y are represented by the vector diagram. Show what x minus y is. So remember, in order to subtract, we take the first one and then we add the negative of the second one, so that's y. So we're going to reverse y like this, and the net or resultant vector is going to be the vector that goes from the tail of the first to the head of the last, like that. And then we find which answer matches that, which is D. For the second one, the graph shows the variation with time, t, of the acceleration a of a body that starts from rest at t equals 0. So this is a situation where the acceleration increases, which is kind of an unusual situation. However, an acceleration time graph, we can work out what the final speed is by just determining the area under the graph, because it tells us kind of for how long. It's really going to be the product of the acceleration and the time. And so this area under the graph here is going to be equal to half base times height, which is half of 10, 5 times 15, which is 75 meters per second. There we go. Okay. A feather is dropped from rest at a height of 9 meters above the surface of the moon. It takes 3 seconds to reach the surface. Based on this observation, which of the following is the best estimate for the acceleration of free fall at the surface of the moon? Well, we know that S is equal to half at squared. It actually equals ut plus half at squared. But because the initial speed, if it's dropped from rest, is 0, it becomes S equals half at squared. So that's going to be, so A is going to be equal to 2s over t squared, which is 18 over 3 squared, which is 2 meters per second, which is C. Okay, A4. A small object P is suspended by a vertical light string. It's then pulled to one side by a force equal in magnitude to the weight of the object and held stationary in the position shown below. Which of the following is the correct free body diagram for the forces acting on P in the position shown above? Okay, so we must have a weight force, we must have a tension force, and since it's an equilibrium, the sum of those two must be the force of the person holding it. So we've got this force, and this force. And so those three vectors, this one, the hypotenuse of this triangle is going to be longer than the other two. So which diagram shows that? That's A. Because in C the hypotenuse is either shorter or as long as the other two. Okay, so A is the only answer that makes sense. It says it's held stationary, so it certainly can't be B or D. And it can't be C because this hypotenuse is too short. Okay, a body of weight W is sliding down an inclined plane at a constant speed. The plane makes an angle theta to the horizontal. Which of the following is the magnitude of the frictional force acting on the block? It's sliding at a constant speed, it means it's an equilibrium. We have the weight force, we have a normal force, and we have a friction force. So we know that if we add weight, normal force, and friction force, we should get 0. We know that this angle here is theta, and that's because if we tilt the plane by an angle theta, then the normal force will also have been tilted by an angle theta from the vertical. We also know that this is W, and we want to work out the size of the frictional force, which is this one. And so F frictional force in this situation has got to be equal to W times, well, F is the opposite side, right? So it's got to be sine theta. I was surprised throughout your multi-choice answers how little working there was on your pages. You need to go through the working for every problem if you're going to expect to get the right answer. Okay, which of the following is a list of fundamental units only? Kilogram mole Kelvin, kilogram coulomb Kelvin, ampere mole centigrade. But that's not a fundamental. That's not a fundamental unit. Coulomb is not a fundamental unit. It's A. Okay. A7, the length of each side of a cube of a material is measured to be 20 millimeters with absolute uncertainty of plus or minus 1. The percentage uncertainty in the calculated volume of the cube is... So the percentage uncertainty in length is 1 over 20 or 5%, right? So multiplication means add percentage uncertainty, and we have L times L times L. So we're going to have, so uncertainty is 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals 15%. Here we go. A block is sliding along a surface. Which of the following factors has minimal effect on the frictional force acting between the block and the surface? We spoke about this in class. We never spoke about this. The material from which the block is made. We didn't talk about that. The normal force between the block and the surface. We know that that has a big effect. That is the significant factor. The area of contact between the block and the surface. That's the one. The material that the block is made of will affect the coefficient of friction, and lubricants will also affect the coefficient of friction between the two surfaces because it changes the nature of the surfaces. Okay, so that's the multi-choice section of the paper. We'll have a look at the other questions now.